everybody, and welcome back to Inside the Stewards Room, episode 5. And of course, joined alongside me for this fine Friday evening is, of course, Colin himself. Welcome along, Colin. How was your week?
Hi, Nick. Hi, all. How's things? Yeah, not too bad. Well, I'm actually on holiday as of now, so I've got next week off work, which is great. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to get as much practice in next week as we're weighing our wrists with. But we've got quite a lot to go through tonight, Nick.
Yes, Monza throwing up a bit of an incident packed, which, often it does. Lots of straights with slow corners after it. It is going to kind of result in one thing or another. But, I mean, generally, it wasn't horrible, but there were some incidents, particularly in the P3 tier, Cole, that just made it look a little bit messy.
Yes, yeah, we obviously noticed it on stream as well, that it got a bit messy during that race, and obviously we'll go through a couple of stewarding reports shortly.
Yeah, well, the stewards were busy this week working hard, so big thanks to Colin, Axelop, and Kingen. And we're going to dive straight in to the incident. So we're going to be looking at, I think, 5 Jess has got for us. Jess is in our ear, by the way, so everything on screen is from Jess. So I think we're going to jump straight into the P3 tier. And this was, Cole, one of the worst incidents we've seen in a while, just due to the nature of it, the danger of it on track. So you can see here, Cole, that Fury Formula has stopped his car there on track to gain the delta back, but there was no need to do that, was there?
No, there certainly wasn't. And you can see here now that he's overtaken the safety car, stopped and reversed on track. Now, Fury was under the impression that he wasn't to overtake the safety car at that stage, but that was an incorrect assumption. He was obligated to overtake the safety car, like the game said. In that situation, the safety car is waiting to get the leader of the race. So it is correct to overtake during that situation.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, look, in these situations, you see, you may pass the safety car. But in these situations, Cole, it's really important that if you've made a mistake, yes, I understand the kind of the scariness of, oh, I might get disqualified or I might get a penalty or whatever it might be, but it's not just about you in that moment, because as you can see, look at the mess that's caused further on. Jamie's involved, Gaza has an incident, Fury actually ends up ending his race because of that anyway. Penalties are given out, so you can see he stops completely, but he's still got 10 seconds, Fury, to get that gap down. So there's no need to stop the car on track. We shouldn't ever be stopping the cars on track, Cole. And as you're about to see, you definitely shouldn't be reversing. So you'll see that Max goes past, and then Max is now being told to let Fury back through. And then you've got Jamie and Gaza coming. A bit of a mess.
Yeah, it was a complete mess. And like you said, Nick, there's no reason to slam on the brakes when you go in the red. Like Nick said, there was 10 seconds, which is an acre of time to get that delta back without parking it. And of course, Fury does it on a couple of occasions and then actually goes into reverse. So taking all that into account, the stewards issued Fury a qualifying ban plus 4 penalty points on his license. That meant he reached the license milestone of another qualifying ban. So Fury receives 2 qualifying bans, one for Belgium and for the next race in Baku, assuming that he turns up to both. If not, it'll be carried on to the next next race that he does enter.
Yeah, and ultimately, I was just going to say, Fury ended his race in this further on with the contact with Jamie, but I think had he finished the race, the stewards would have taken the view to probably disqualify him from the result, regardless of where he finished, just due to the dangerous driving that was performed on track, and you're about to see that the two in front, Jamie and Gazza, who are very experienced drivers. Then Jamie tries to let Gazza through, moves over. Gazza goes the same way, runs into the back of Jamie, and that resulted in Jamie getting a penalty as well. So, Cole, if you are going to let a driver through, or the game's telling you, it's got to be done in a safe manner.
Yeah, exactly. And do it in a way where the other driver is aware of you doing it, and you're giving him plenty of time to react to you as well. Which unfortunately didn't happen here with James. That he moves across and then breaks in front of Gazza. Gazza's got nowhere to go. So the stewards did issue Jamie a 15-second time penalty for that. Now, normally that would be a harsher penalty, but we did consider the situation, the confusion that was caused by Fury. So we did go a slightly more lenient than we normally would.
Yeah, because we use the parameters that I think we brought up on screen in the opening episode. I don't know if Jess has them to hand, but the parameters are there. There we are. So they're used for. We talked about this in depth on the first episode, Cole. First of all, we decide who's at fault. Once that's been decided, the parameter image that you see on your screen pretty much does the rest of the work for the stewards.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why we introduced these stewarding parameters was to create more and better consistency with our stewarding penalties. So almost the situation of what the penalty is almost taken out of the steward's hands, and it's done by these stewarding parameters.
Yeah, which of course is what all drivers want. They want consistency and transparency, and this way we're able to offer that. You mentioned penalty points, Cole. We haven't covered that too much. We know that all the drivers can view the penalty points spreadsheet, but how do the stewards hand it out? It's just for racing incidents, isn't it, that they get penalty points on their license? Yeah,
that's right. It's only for racing incidents. So things like if you ready up too early, you will get a points deduction, but that won't be a penalty point on your license, for example. But the only other thing that we do give penalty points for outside of racing would be bad language or offensive language within chats towards another driver.
Alrighty, well, let's move on to the King A and Seisty incident, which is the next one we're going to look at, again from the P3 tier. So, Cole, we can see here, there's plenty of room on this straight, but we often see contact.
Yeah, it's quite common, and I always find it a bit confusing how this section of track always seems to create incidents. So you can see there, Jess is replaying it now. So Kinney, he gets alongside Shiesty. He's alongside of him, but Shiesty, you can see him now, he's drifting towards the wall and towards the racing line, not leaving the car's width for Kinney, and unfortunately for Kinney, gets quite severe front wing damage. So you can see there, bang, and he loses his entire front wing. So by the stewarding parameters there, that's when he gets his the 20 to 25 seconds for that particular offence.
Alrighty, let's head over to Mikey and Richelou from the P2 tier. I know Mikey's often in our streams watching the episodes, so I think we're going to get that, which I believe is turn 1. So Cole, we can see Mikey going through here, cautious, understandable, and then gets a tap on the rear.
Yeah, so he's at that stage, he's had no red markers, so he's had no warning that there's a driver near him. He's already through the corner. So if we look here, so he's sensibly on the brakes, then goes for the scissor and then just gets a whack from behind, which is from Richelou. Jess, I don't know whether you got it from Richelou's view by any chance. But the stewards deemed that, here we go, this is from Richelou. So you can see there's Mikey up ahead. He's already turning in and he hits the back of Mikey. That was quite a straightforward penalty for the stewards. There was no ambiguity there. That was definitely Richelau's fault, so he gets a 5-second penalty. Now, if he had let Mikey go and gone, oh well, I completely screwed that up. Let's let him go. Then the stewards would more than likely have gone racing incident, and Mikey himself might not have even reported it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the stewards want to see from drivers. You know, you can see, look, there's minimal contact, there's minimal time lost for Mikey. So had Richelieu just waited for Mikey to repass him and then tried to attack to gain the position again, the stewards would have put it down to, no incident. And even if Mikey had spun round and lost more time, the stewards, if he had waited, the stewards would still look at that and consider that when deciding a penalty. So, if it was an orange incident, it might not necessarily be racing incident, no further action, but they would perhaps drop it down to a lesser time penalty for the driver at fault because he's shown some sort of remorse and racing awareness to say, hey, that wasn't fair. I know I've given you damage, but look, come back past me anyway.
Yeah, a prime example was actually Dad around China last season. So he outbraked himself on I think it was the last lap actually, into the last chicane before the long back straight in China, and hit, I think, was J-Luke, and J-Luke got some damage, but Dad slowed down and made sure that he didn't gain an advantage by it, and made sure that J-Luke was back ahead of him, and that's when the stewards dropped that amount of penalty, which would have normally been probably, I think normally in that situation would be 10, and then the stewards gave 5 instead.
Rob raising a good question. Don't you think it would be hard to let him pass because of the traffic? It's a very valid point. But what the stewards will look into, Mikey doesn't have to be let through instantly. It could be, after the chicane or on the straight, that Richelieu, lifts off the throttle slightly and lets Mikey through. Ultimately, Richelieu's got to decide whether he wants to risk taking a penalty or whether he wants to risk, losing 2 or 3 positions to be able to do that. In this case, potentially Cole taking the 5 seconds rather than letting him through would probably cost him less race time. But ultimately, we want to encourage the right thing to do. To get the result that people want.
Yeah, exactly that. And let's say, for example, you make a mistake, you hit a drive, and you go, oh my God, look what I've done. Oh, I can't let him go. He's like 6 cars back. But later on in the race, you notice that he's behind you. Let him go then. And then make a note of it. And then if any reason that driver's reported, you can say, yes, I understood that what I did was wrong, but then 5 or 6 laps later, I had a perfect opportunity to let him go, and I did so and used the footage. And then we can take that into consideration.
If you overtake him 2 corners later, then, that's fair game.
Yeah.
But that's what racing is all about. All right, so let's move on to, it's another incident on the back straight, this time from the P1 tier between Chris and Curry. And this was an interesting one, Cole, because we were heading it was closer towards the braking zone. Now, it's always difficult to be overtaking at a high-speed corner like Ascari. And what the stewards felt that Chris moved across too much and squeezed Curry into the braking zone.
Yeah, this one was a very, very difficult one, actually. There was quite a lot of discussion between the stewards. But if you look here now, you can see Chris just slightly drifts a little too much to the right. But then, if you look on here now from Chris, but Curie, despite the fact he sees Chris closed in the door, doesn't react at all. So the stewards, when they looked at it, they thought, well, do you know what? Looking at this, each driver has contributed to that incident. And so we chose not to take any action. Now, Also, the driver requested, I think it was Chris, requested to have his penalty removed. Now, because we deemed that both drivers contributed to the incident, then we decided and chose not to remove any penalties from either driver.
Yeah, always a difficult place to overtake there. And obviously, you know, I think Curry's within every right to go for that move. Chris has been flashing on his none on his ers. You can see there, still flashing, decides to move across, and it's you know, look, I think the overspeed that Curry had, the corner was probably lost by the Aston Martin. It was always going to be difficult to outbrake, given the superior speed that Curry was arriving to the braking zone, and you're never going to want to go side by side through there. So yeah, it's just about, you know, drivers picking as and when to choose. But yeah, incident, no further action between those two. Now let's move on to something we haven't seen in a little while, Cole, a few seasons, but the rule was introduced because drivers had previously done it in one hub, and so the rule was introduced about you can't just cut the track during qualifying to try and get back to the pits to get another lap in or change tyres quicker, because obviously there's only a certain amount of time in qualifying. But you're not allowed to just straight line chicanes or cut corners for that benefit. If it's done to get out of the way of a driver, or you genuinely make a mistake or things like that, the stewards have no issue. But we saw it in P3 tier with 3 drivers.
Yeah, so the drivers did it, and
Sorry,
it was
P1 tier.
Yes, P1 tier. So the drivers did it to gain an advantage. Now, if they did it to, like Nick said, to get out of the way of a car approaching behind, then we wouldn't do it. So we can see here now that they're on board furious and flat out straight through the first chicane, because he's trying to get back to the pit lane to be able to do another hot lap. And here we get up into turn 4, and you'll see him do the same thing again. There we go, straight through. So that is not remotely fair. And so the stewards have issued, so that would be Furious, Curie, and I think Alex was the other driver. They've all got 3 place grid penalties for the next race that they enter.
Yeah, and Cole, I'm just going to read out the rule on SimGrid because it's so clear. During the formation lap, if a driver drives in a dangerous manner, drives excessively too slow to make purpose of another contract... Oh, sorry, no, wrong one. I've got one before that. During in and out laps in qualifying, a driver must not deliberately cut the track and go outside the white lines unless they're doing so in a set of circumstances permitted by the stewards. So it's under the general rules section number 15. Slam dunk, really. So yeah, those 3 drivers got penalised for that. Funnily enough, Cole, these sorts of things, they only happen in the top tiers, don't they?
Yeah, we've noticed that. I don't know why, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's clear as day, isn't it? You know, there's no ambiguity there at all. But Nick, it's just a prime example of read the rules. You know, if they've read the rules, ask exactly that. You know, because if they just simply asked in the chat, "Am I allowed to straight line this chicane?" No. Brilliant. Thanks very much. See you later. They're now going to get 3 place grid penalties which was just completely needless. You know.
Alrighty, well that's some incidents that the stewards investigated this week. We hope it's been official by kind of us talking through them. Let's move on to some good overtaking and defending. So Just is going to bring up a clip from the P2 tier, which was Waste. And Cole, the reason I selected this to look at this week was because it's great to have awareness and anticipation, because you need that in racing. So you can see that Waste has got a run here, and he's going to tuck in for the slipstream and then realise that car in front's going into the pits.
Yeah, that was... When I first saw this, now, I don't know whether any of you guys can remember this. Let me know in the chat if you ever remember this incident. So we're back now in the early 90s, I want to say 91, 92, and this is a identical situation where Berger was following Patrese. Patrese dives to go in the pit Patrese, Berger dives to go in the pit lane, and Patrese hits the back of Berger's car and launches up in the air. Have a little look at it on YouTube. Google Patrese Berger crash, and it'll be the first thing that comes up. But this is great awareness by Wace. It really, really is, and superb reactions. Like Nick said, you can see him now, right? And he thinks, oh, Mike's covering the inside, right? I'm going to go. And then realizes instantly, hang on a minute now, Mike's going in the pit lane here. And swerves to avoid him. So fair play to Wace. Wace showing his karting reflexes, as I used to race karts alongside Wace many years ago. But that was very, very good.
All right, let's jump over to Axlock's three-way battle for the lead in the P1 tier. And, you know, when you're battling for the lead in the top tier of one hub, you know, you expect the racing to be class. And with long DRS zones, Cole, heavy braking zones, you know the drivers are going to be absolutely on the limit. And this is exactly what we love to see in one hub racing. This is why we all turn up and race every week. We can see on board here, heading down, it's about to get really feisty into turn one.
Yeah, look at this. They're 3 wide. And you can see the Haas go, no, that's not a clever idea. That's only going to end in tears. And Coney gets out with Axlock in second. Now, in the past, I would have, that would have been a crash. And you can see now that Alex has actually got the run now down into the following chicane. But that was clever decision making because he was in the inside. He could have gone for it, but it would have been so risky, and it would have caused an accident, and there would have been carbon fiber bits flying everywhere.
Yeah, it's just a shame, obviously. Although Axlock came out of turn one in the lead, he got that 10-second speeding in the pit lane penalty, which ultimately cost him the win. But I'm sure he'll be back in Spa to try and reclaim that. And this is from the Aston Martin's point of view. So you can see heading down, you can see the 2 cars in the mirror. And it's hard enough to get 2 cars side by side. So I think the Haas driver was really smart and sensible. And you can see there Coley into the second part of the chicane. He actually left enough room originally, but then when his car got close enough, got far enough ahead, he was then able to take the second part of the chicane and touch the curb with his left wheel. So the first part he left room for Axlock. Axlock then didn't have as much momentum, and therefore Coley was able to take the second part of the chicane. So great racing between those 3 guys there. Next we're going to jump over to Mark's teammate Chris, who got 3 cars on the exit of the second chicane, and this is just about being clever on lap 1 really, Cole, isn't it? I think Justice can bring it up for us. So you can see he's braked nice and early, couple drivers, bit of contact, I think that's my wing flying off. Drivers are shuffling for position, one goes on the grass, and he just gets on his throttle nice and early, takes the clear part of the track, and goes, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's an absolute belter, isn't it? But this is the Chris of old, this is the intelligence and the foresight. Now, you could see him go, they're side by side, they're not going to get good momentum. I'm going to brake early and cut the inside. That move was planned here, straight away. You can see him brake a bit earlier, look. Knowing then that he can slingshot out of the second part of the chicane on the inside and gets 3 places done. Perfect.
Alrighty, and let's move over to Larkin's point of view, just from the P2 tier to finish off our good racing for this week's episode. And then we're just going to talk through this. So this is with Moki through Parabolica. Oh, it's changed names now, but it'll always be Parabolica to me. And you can see he gets the run nice and early. Moki was running I think nowheres there. So he's got the overspeed. And what I really want to point out here is as he breaks into turn 1, you'll see that the red arrow appear. And look at Larkin's driving. He left the room. I don't know if Jess can pause it slightly just before this. He left the car width's room as soon as he saw that red arrow appear into the first part of the chicane. Which is just this is the exact type of racing that doesn't cause incidents.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's awareness and knowing what to do in that situation as well. So you can see that Larkin slightly delays his turning point, and he's therefore not fully on the apex to leave room for that car on the inside. But then he's still got the momentum for the second part of the chicane. Then that could have quite easily been Larkin facing the t'other way round. And then you could see it, if we could see it again in full speed, Jess, because the thing is, that in situations like this, it's very, very difficult to do it on the fly, and it comes with experience.
I don't think it's so difficult to be able to judge how far, because we know we've got the 50% rule at the point of turning, but for Larkin to be able to judge that in this scenario, such heavy braking, is really difficult. So the mindset that Larkin's chosen to go into this corner, into this chicane in, is I'll give room because I believe I can still gain the position, and I don't want contact. And I think if more drivers were to race with that mindset, then it'd be a better experience for the people watching, for the drivers driving, for the commentators, for everyone. So just something to think about that I noticed when watching Larkin's highlights, and I wanted to point out. So great racing between these guys. Now, Cole, that's all our good examples we wanted to highlight this week. But let's talk about Spa. We've already seen, and we won't confirm who because that's not fair, lots of drivers taking new car parts. Why might that be?
I think this is a track where it's one of the easier tracks to overtake on. Now, my dad actually made a very, very good point about it, though. He said the thing is, he said, yes, there's plenty of overtaking opportunities, but there's not many laps, which is a good point. So you're going to have to be quite decisive with your overtaking. So we do have quite a number, and I don't mind mentioning, I have taken my penalty for this race. I'm not going to say which one, though. That one can wait. But I am taking a car wear penalty for this race for the reason that there's plenty of overtaking opportunities. They reworked Spa a few seasons ago. It's flipping brilliant now.
Yeah, long DRS zone down the Kemmel Straight, reaching speeds of over 200 miles an hour. But generally, it's just when I was driving this the other day, I was thinking to myself, man, what a great track this is. There's not many tracks where you drive around and you feel, really satisfied, particularly some of the newer tracks these days. But this is just a classic. Overtaking into the bus stop chicane. Remember, if you want to dive into the pits, better to be on the inside if you're going side by side with another car, so you can keep it tight on exit and dive into that pits, which is really narrow and tight, Cole. We have seen drivers lose their wing before there.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I did a bit of practice this morning and I clouted the wall myself and lost my front wing. So something to be a bit wary of. Yeah, we love Spa. It has changed slightly over the years, but it's still kept its character. I do prefer the last sector from the 2000s, mind. I must the old bus stop chicane. But yeah, what a fan! I think of all the special moments that this track has given us over the years. We had Michael Schumacher's debut here in the Jordan back in, I think, 91. Damon Hill winning in the Jordan in 1998 in atrocious wet weather conditions with a crash that took out nearly half the field. One of, if not the greatest overtaking maneuver, hacking in on Schumacher down the Kemmel Straight. And I think this is another reason why why everyone loves it, because there's so many fantastic memories, and it's an old circuit as well.
It is. Well, we can't wait till Sunday. You can catch all of our tiers live on Twitch, of course, streamed live with commentary. So, Colt, thanks for joining me in the comms box for this episode. And Jess, of course, is in the background. Thanks, Jess. You can't hear her, but she's showing you everything that you see on screen. And of course, thanks to our partners and sponsors, you've got SimGrid, who we run all of our leagues through, Vespa Team, who you can check out our merchandise and win in these seasons. And then you've got Jess has just pulled them from the screen, so I can't see them all. Hold on. I was going through the logos there. Let me get them up here. Next Level Racing, which is of course provides setups since season 14 now, so a long time they've been helping us out. Sim racing setups, of course, you can get discount through our code, and you can win vouchers through getting driver of the day. So definitely something to race for, even if you aren't, finishing the top of the pile on Sunday. And of course, Pure Sim Gear, you can get your sim racing socks and sim racing gloves, gives you those extra couple temps. And of course, there is a discount you can use for them. Cole, Jess, thank you very much. Everyone watching, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Inside the Stewards Room. Hope it's been insightful. Colin and I always enjoy it. And yeah, looking forward to a great race on Sunday. See you then.
Yeah, see you all. Goodbye.